The rain came down in steady sheets, the kind that blurred the highway lights into soft ribbons of gold. Ethan had just finished another late shift at the diner, the smell of bacon grease still clinging to his jacket. His daughter, Maya, slept in the back seat, her small hand resting on her stuffed rabbit, her chest rising and falling in the rhythm of dreams. The roads were empty except for the sound of the wipers dragging across the windshield. He was only 10 minutes from home when a flash of hazard lights caught his attention. A car sat tilted on the shoulder, one wheel flat, steam curling up from under the hood. The driver, a woman in a beige coat, was standing in the rain with her phone held high, searching for a signal. Ethan slowed down, his instincts stronger than his exhaustion. He pulled over and rolled down his window. "You okay, ma'am?" he called out. She turned, startled, water dripping from her hair. I can't get reception, the tire's blown. I already called roadside, but they said it might take an hour." "An hour out here in this cold?" Ethan stepped out, grabbing his old toolbox from the back. "Let me help you, I've changed more tires than I can count." The woman hesitated, looking at the quiet road, the rain, the stranger with kind eyes and rough hands. Then she nodded. "Thank you." He crouched beside the wheel, mud splattering his jeans while she held the flashlight steady. "You're a pro," she said with a nervous laugh. "Just a single dad who's had to learn a few things," he replied, tightening the last bolt. "I cook better than I fix cars, though." Her smile was small but genuine. "Then I definitely owe you dinner." Ethan shook his head. "Just get home safe, that's enough." He closed the trunk and stepped back. "You should drive slow till you get the tire replaced." She opened her purse, fumbling for something. "Please, at least let me give you—" He stopped her with a gentle wave. "It's fine, really." For a moment, they stood under the falling rain, strangers connected by small kindness. She looked at him as if wanting to say something more, but instead whispered, "I'm Ava." "Ethan," he replied. "Take care out there, Ava." Her car disappeared into the night, red taillights swallowed by the storm. Ethan climbed back into his truck, turned on the heater, and glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. She stirred but didn't wake. He smiled faintly. "Almost home, kiddo." The next morning, the diner smelled of coffee and burnt toast as the regulars filled their booths. Ethan flipped pancakes while his boss argued with a delivery man about unpaid invoices. When the door swung open, a gust of cold air rushed in, along with two people in crisp clothes holding clipboards. One of them was Ava. Her hair was neatly tied back now, her beige coat spotless, her expression unreadable. Ethan froze, spatula midair. She looked at him, a flicker of recognition in her eyes, then she turned to the manager beside her. "This is the place?" "Yes, ma'am," the man replied. "Part of the old block we're closing down. Lease termination notices went out this morning." Ava nodded, scanning the small diner with a businesslike calm. On the door behind her, taped in bright red letters, was the notice Ethan hadn't seen yet. "Lease ends in 60 days. Building to be renovated." The room seemed to tilt. The place that paid for Maya's medicine, their rent, their entire life, gone. Ava's gaze met his again across the counter, rainlight still lingering in his memory. She didn't say a word. And Ethan didn't know that what started as a quiet act of kindness on a rainy highway was about to change both of their lives forever. The morning after the notice, the diner felt different. The usual chatter about football games and weather forecasts had turned into whispers about eviction and renovations. Ethan kept his head down behind the grill, flipping eggs and pretending not to hear. But every word sank in. 60 days. 60 days until the diner closed. 60 days until he lost the job that kept Maya's medicine paid and the lights on at home. The door chimed and everyone went quiet. Carl walked in, the property manager. He wore a spotless vest and carried a clipboard like a weapon. His voice carried easily across the room. "Starting today, the gas line will be shut off until safety inspections are complete, no exceptions." The owner, an older man named Frank, slammed his towel on the counter. "You can't just shut us down on a Thursday morning. We've got a full house." Carl adjusted his tie without flinching. "You've had plenty of notice. It's for public safety." Ethan stepped forward, trying to stay calm. "Sir, that means we can't cook. If we can't cook, we can't stay open. We'll lose days of income." Carl gave him a thin smile. "Then maybe you should have read the lease before signing it." The hiss of the gas line faded as the technician outside turned the valve. The sizzle on the grill died. The diner went silent. Customers looked around in confusion, some reaching for their coats. Frank muttered a curse under his breath. Ethan wiped his hands on his apron. "There's another way," he said, turning to Ava, who stood near the window watching everything. "You can phase the renovation, fix the back section first, let us keep the front open. That way nobody loses their job." Ava hesitated, the words catching her off guard. She glanced at Carl. "Is that possible?" "Not according to code," Carl snapped, "and even if it were, it's inefficient. Better to close everything, get it done fast." The customers were listening now, their eyes moving between the three of them. Ethan felt the weight of every gaze. Efficient for who? He asked quietly. For the people who work here, or for the ones who just want another luxury space?
Carl's jaw tightened. You're out of line.
Ethan held his stare. Maybe, but someone has to be. Ava's expression wavered, torn between the paperwork she represented and the people standing in front of her. But before she could respond, a sharp metallic sound came from the kitchen. Frank cursed again. The pilot light was dead. The ovens were cooling fast. One of the regulars, an elderly man who came in every morning for pancakes, started coughing. He waved off concern, saying it was just the cold air, but his hands shook as he reached for his coffee. Ethan moved without thinking. He poured the man a glass of orange juice, knelt beside him, and spoke gently. "Sir, you feeling okay? You look pale." The man's voice trembled. "Low sugar, I forgot my meds." Ethan grabbed a slice of pie from the counter, handed it over. "Eat this, slow." He stayed until the man's breathing steadied. When he stood up again, every eye in the diner was on him. The room had gone completely silent except for the sound of rain tapping on the window. Ava was still watching. There was something in her face now, something softer, almost human. Carl broke the silence with a clap of his hands. "Enough drama, we're done here for today. Everyone out until the inspection's finished." Frank swore under his breath, but Ethan just stared at the sign on the door. "Lease ends in 60 days. He didn't say anything. He simply took off his apron, folded it neatly, and set it on the counter. And as Ava turned to leave, she caught one last look at him, drenched in sweat and quiet resolve, and for the first time, she wondered if maybe shutting everything down wasn't as simple as a line in a contract. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of thunder again. And before the week was over, that storm would return, bringing with it something none of them expected. By Friday morning, the diner had gone from the warm heartbeat of the town to a room of silence and empty tables. The gas lines were still sealed, the stove cold as stone. Frank sat by the counter, flipping through unpaid bills, muttering about inspectors and permits. Ethan wiped the same spotless section of countertop again and again, more to quiet his nerves than to clean. Outside, the wind rattled the loose window sign. It read open, but everyone knew it wasn't true anymore. Ava showed up around mid-morning, clipboard in hand, her heels echoing on the tiled floor. Carl trailed behind her, carrying a folder thick with documents. He spoke first, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "We warned you. The building's out of code. Until the renovations start, this place stays closed. End of discussion." Frank slammed his fist against the counter. "We've passed every inspection for 10 years.
"Times change," Carl said flatly. "So do standards."
Ava's eyes moved slowly around the room, the half-done breakfast orders, the regulars waiting by the window, Ethan standing quietly near the back. Something about the stillness unsettled her. It wasn't rebellion she saw in their faces, it was loss. Ethan stepped forward. "At least let us run coffee and cold food until the inspection's done. People rely on this place, and Frank can't afford to lose a week of business." Carl crossed his arms. "That's not how regulations work." Ethan's tone stayed even. "No, that's how compassion works."
For a second, no one breathed. Carl turned red. "You want compassion? Pay the rent on time. Follow the rules."
"Rules are supposed to protect people," Ethan said quietly, "not destroy them." A murmur of agreement rippled through the small crowd. A few regulars had gathered outside, peering in through the glass. Ava took a slow breath. "Carl, maybe we can—" She didn't finish. The old man who always sat by the corner booth had collapsed, his coffee spilling across the table. Ethan was already moving. He pushed through the chairs, knelt beside him. "Sir, you hear me?" He felt for a pulse, weak but there. "His sugar's low again," Ethan said. "Someone get me orange juice now." A waitress rushed to hand him a bottle from the fridge. Ethan raised the man's head and coaxed him to drink, his voice calm and steady. "You're okay. Stay with me. It's just a dip. Breathe slow." Minutes passed before the color returned to the man's cheeks. The customers exhaled in unison, the kind of shared relief that binds people for life. Ethan stood up, his shirt damp with sweat, and looked toward the doorway. Carl was pale. Ava, speechless. "That," Ethan said quietly, "is why we need this place open, for people like him."
Carl cleared his throat, his voice shaky now. "You're not certified to—"
"Maybe not," Ethan interrupted, "but I was here, and that's what mattered." No one spoke after that. The old man, still weak, managed a faint smile. "He saved me," he whispered. Ava looked at Ethan differently now. The rain on the windows blurred the world outside, as if separating the moment from everything else. For the first time since she'd stepped into this town, she saw something she hadn't seen in years, people choosing each other over profit. Carl gathered his papers in silence and walked out without another word. Ava stayed a little longer, her gaze fixed on Ethan as he helped the man to his feet. The clipboard in her hand suddenly felt heavier than steel. That night, long after closing hours, the lights inside the diner still glowed. Ethan sat by the window with a mug of cold coffee, staring at the empty street. The town had fallen quiet again, but something inside him had started to stir, a decision fragile and dangerous. He didn't know it yet, but before the next sunrise, that decision would set everything in motion. By Monday morning, the sky over the lake was washed in dull gray, the kind of color that made everything look tired. Ethan walked to work with Maya's small hand in his. She hummed a tune, skipping beside him, unaware of how heavy her father's thoughts were. Her backpack bounced with each step, the patches she'd sewn on it peeling at the corners. When they reached the diner, a small crowd had gathered out front, shop owners, neighbors, and a few familiar faces from the weekly market. Ethan slowed down. Something was taped across the glass door, covering the old open sign. Public notice, building to be vacated, city council hearing next week. Frank stood by the doorway, his face red from arguing. "They're moving faster than we thought," he said. "Whole blocks getting cleared out for redevelopment." Ethan took a deep breath. That means every store here's done? By winter, yeah, the barber, the laundry, the daycare, gone. Frank rubbed his forehead. "Carl's been pushing it hard, says it's about fire safety, but I don't buy it." A few doors down, the owner of the daycare came out holding a toddler on her hip. "Where am I supposed to go?" she cried. The next space is triple the rent." Ethan looked around. The whole street, the same people who lent each other sugar, fixed each other's signs, shared customers, was being erased one notice at a time. By noon, Ava arrived. She parked quietly and stepped out, her coat pressed and her eyes hidden behind sunglasses. She looked at the crowd, at the paper taped to the diner door. Her shoulders stiffened. "Good morning," she said carefully. "I know the situation looks sudden, but this is a standard procedure." "Standard?" Frank shot back. "You're shutting down families, not factories." Ava's tone stayed calm. "The building needs to be updated to meet safety regulations. It's for everyone's good." Ethan took a slow step forward. "Then why do the notices say redevelopment? That's not safety, that's profit." Her eyes met his, sharp but not cruel. "You think I don't care about the people here?" "I think you forgot what it feels like to be one of them." The words hit harder than he expected. A flicker crossed her face, something like shame or memory, but she covered it quickly. "You have a week to prepare your case. The hearing will decide." Carl appeared beside her, holding a folder thick with papers. "Don't waste your time," he said to Frank. "It's already been approved." Ava turned to him. "No, it hasn't. The council still votes." Carl hesitated. "Right, of course." The crowd caught that pause, that brief crack in his confidence. Ethan saw it too. He didn't know what it meant yet, but he could feel it. Something wasn't clean about the way this was being pushed through. When Ava left, the town felt smaller, quieter. The people dispersed slowly, muttering about rent, inspections, and deadlines they couldn't afford. Ethan stayed behind, staring at the notice. The letters blurred as the wind tugged at the paper's corners. That night, after putting Maya to bed, he sat at the kitchen table, lit only by a small lamp. The bills were stacked on one side, Maya's insulin kit on the other. He traced a finger along the label, reading the price printed on it. He thought about the diner, about the old man who nearly passed out, about the people who would have nowhere to go. And about Ava, the woman who seemed torn between her clipboard and her conscience. He didn't hate her, not yet. He just couldn't understand how someone could look at the same street and see nothing worth saving. Outside, the wind picked up again, tapping against the window like a quiet reminder. Time was running out. And before the next week ended, that single sheet of paper on the diner door would turn the whole town upside down. The weekend brought another storm, softer this time, but heavy enough to blur the edges of the small Ohio town. Ethan stayed late at the diner, repairing a leaky window, even though the gas lines were still closed. He worked quietly, the sound of rain and the hum of the refrigerator the only things left alive inside the building. When he reached for a roll of tape near the counter, something slipped from the shelf above and landed at his feet, a crumpled brown envelope. The paper was worn and slightly water-stained, its seal broken. Inside were a few receipts, a business card with the gold lettering Whitland Properties, and a folded napkin. The napkin stopped him. In the middle of it was a small pencil sketch, simple, almost childlike, of a diner just like this one. Above the door, in looping handwriting, were the words "Mom's Place." Ethan turned it over, wondering why a corporate property folder would hold something so personal. On the back, faint writing read, "For the day I can build something that lasts." He stood there for a long time, listening to the rain hit the roof. The name felt familiar, though he couldn't place it. When he showed it to Frank the next morning, the older man's eyes widened. "I remember that name," Frank said, lowering his voice. Mom's place used to be a diner too. Used to sit right where the new grocery store stands now, closed maybe 20 years back. The woman who owned it was kind. Everyone loved her. People said she lost everything when the city sold the land. Ethan ran a thumb over the faded sketch. And the owner's name?
Frank squinted, trying to remember. Whitland, I think. Mary Whitland. Had a little girl who'd sit by the counter drawing all day.
Ethan froze. Whitland. The same name printed on the lease notice, the same name on the gold business card in his hand. That afternoon, he saw Ava again. She was standing by her car in the rain, arguing softly with Carl. Her voice was firm but shaken. "We're not rushing this through without proper review. I want the council to see the phased plan." Carl looked irritated. "You're letting sentiment get in the way of numbers. That's not how business works." "Maybe business is the problem," she said quietly. Ethan stepped closer, holding out the envelope. "You dropped this a while ago." Ava turned, surprised. For a moment, she didn't move. When she saw what he was holding, her expression changed completely. "Where did you find that?" "In the diner, behind the counter." She took the envelope slowly, her eyes softening as she unfolded the napkin. The rain smeared the pencil lines, but the drawing was still there, Mom's place.
"My mother drew that sign," she whispered. "She used to run a little diner just like this one. Same kind of booth, same smell of coffee and bread. I spent half my childhood sitting on a stool watching her work."
"What happened to it?" Ethan asked gently. "The city bought the land," Ava said, voice barely above a whisper. "Promised her a new space, but they never built it. She died before she saw anything rebuilt." Ethan looked at her, really looked. The polished surface of the businesswoman faded, replaced by someone who'd lost something too. "So that's why you bought these buildings," he said, to make sure it doesn't happen again. Ava nodded. "That was the plan, fix things before they fell apart, but along the way I started thinking in charts and numbers instead of people." For the first time, she met his eyes without defense. "You reminded me what it actually means to build something that lasts." The sound of rain filled the silence between them. It wasn't harsh anymore, just steady, like the pulse of something being mended. Ava folded the napkin carefully and tucked it into her coat pocket. "The council meeting is on Thursday," she said. "Come, tell them what you told me." Ethan hesitated. "You think they'll listen?" "They will if someone makes them," she replied. "And I think that someone is you." She got into her car, the wipers sweeping away the last of the storm. Ethan stood under the gray sky, the street glistening with puddles. In his hand, a single line from the napkin lingered in his mind, "For the day I can build something that lasts." He didn't know it yet, but that day was coming, and it would begin in that very diner under the same flickering light that had seen everything fall apart. By Tuesday morning, word had spread across the small town that the council hearing was official. Flyers were pinned to bulletin boards and taped to windows, inviting the public to share concerns regarding the Whitland redevelopment proposal. For most, it sounded like a lost cause. But for Ethan, it had become something personal. He arrived early at the diner to help Frank clean, even though the kitchen still couldn't open. The air smelled faintly of dust and cold metal. Frank handed him a box of old paperwork to move into storage, and as Ethan carried it toward the back office, a few sheets slipped out, scattering across the floor. When he bent down to pick them up, his hand froze. One document bore Carl's signature, stamped with a date from 3 weeks before the first notice was even posted. Attached to it was a proposal from a construction company, Omosaosham, the same one that had been hired for every emergency renovation in 3 nearby towns. Something about it felt off. Ethan gathered the papers, brought them to Frank, and said quietly, he signed the closure deal before the inspection even started. Frank frowned, scanning the pages. "That's illegal, means they never planned to give us a chance." Before they could talk further, the bell over the diner door jingled. It was Mrs. Ortega Wise Kaise, the city clerk who lived 2 blocks away, a woman who'd eaten breakfast there almost every Sunday. She stepped in, shaking the rain from her umbrella. "I heard about the meeting," she said softly. "Carl's been moving money through the redevelopment fund. Some of it went to a contractor that doesn't even exist anymore." Frank's eyes widened. "You sure?" She nodded. "I can't say much, but I can give you proof if Ava asks for it officially at the hearing." That evening, Ethan walked to Ava's office at the edge of town. The building looked nothing like the diner, tall glass windows, quiet hallways that smelled of new carpet and disinfectant. He found her sitting at her desk, surrounded by folders, her eyes tired but determined. "I found something," he said, placing the papers down. "Carl's been working deals behind your back, the inspection, the construction, all fake timing." Ava scanned the pages, her jaw tightening with each line. "He used my signature," she whispered. "He forged approvals and pushed the closure through before I even reviewed the files." Ethan watched her stand, pacing the room. That means the hearing isn't about safety anymore, it's about exposure. Ava stopped at the window, staring out at the city lights. If this is true, I'll lose everything, my company, my credibility. Or you'll save everything that matters, Ethan said. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, low and slow. Finally, Ava turned back, a new steadiness in her eyes. Tomorrow, I'll file a request to present evidence against Carl's proposal. Mrs. Ortega can back it up.
Ethan nodded. You're really you're really doing this?
I have to, she said. My mother used to say a business isn't worth anything if you can't walk into it without shame. He smiled faintly. Sounds like something Maya would say. That made Ava laugh. A small, honest sound that broke through the tension. You really think we can win? She asked. I think the truth already did, he said. We just have to let people hear it. As Ethan left the office, the rain began again, steady and calm. It no longer felt like a warning. It felt like the start of something being washed clean. But in a quiet corner of the building, unseen, Carl watched them through the glass wall of the corridor. His expression was unreadable, but his hand tightened around his phone. By dawn, he would make his own call, one that could undo everything they'd built so far. Thursday arrived, gray and cold, the kind of morning when even the birds stayed quiet. The town hall was already full by the time Ethan got there. Shop owners, customers, parents from the daycare, faces lined with worry and hope. The smell of coffee and damp coats hung in the air. Ava stood near the front, papers in hand, her expression steady but pale. She wore no makeup, no business armor, just a simple coat and the quiet weight of someone finally ready to tell the truth. Carl sat 2 rows behind her, checking his phone, whispering to a man in a dark suit. When the council members took their seats, the room fell silent. The mayor adjusted his glasses. We're here to review the Whitland redevelopment proposal. Ms. Ava Whitland, you have the floor. Ava stepped forward. Her voice shook slightly at first. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For months, this project has been described as necessary for safety, but the truth is, it was never about safety. It was about control, about profit. A ripple of murmurs filled the room. Carl stiffened. Ava lifted a folder and handed it to the council clerk. These are contracts signed by my property manager, Carl Henson, all dated before any inspection took place. He pre-approved construction deals with companies tied to his personal accounts. I didn't authorize any of it. Carl stood abruptly. That's a lie. She's twisting paperwork to cover her own mistakes. But Mrs. Ortega rose from the audience, calm and firm. I work in the city clerk's office. Those signatures are real, and those companies haven't paid local taxes in 3 years. This man used the redevelopment fund for his own gain. Gasps spread through the hall. The mayor motioned for quiet. Ava turned toward the crowd. I came here to rebuild what my mother once had, a place where people could belong. But somewhere along the line, I forgot what belonging looked like. This diner, this block, this community, they reminded me. Her eyes found Ethan in the crowd. He nodded once, the same quiet strength he'd shown that night in the rain. One council member leaned forward. Ms. Whitland, what do you propose? Ava took a breath. A phased renovation plan. We keep half the block open while repairs are made to the other half. We set up a temporary safety fund for small businesses to stay afloat during the process. No closures, no layoffs, transparency in every step. For a moment, the room was silent again. That tense pause before something breaks or heals. Then Carl laughed under his breath. You think they'll believe you? You'll bankrupt yourself trying to play savior. Ethan stood up. At least she's trying to save something that matters. His voice carried, low and steady. You want to talk about cost? Ask the parents who'll lose daycare, the workers who'll lose insurance, the old man who nearly collapsed in that diner because it was the only place open for him to rest. Some things don't show up in your spreadsheets. The crowd broke into murmurs again. Agreement, emotion, anger. The mayor tapped his gavel, but even he couldn't hide the flicker of admiration in his eyes. Ava turned to Carl. You forgot, Carl. Buildings don't make towns. People do. Carl opened his mouth to argue, but before he could, a security officer entered the hall, whispered something to the mayor, and handed him a document. The mayor's face hardened. Mr. Henson, he said slowly, there's an active investigation into your accounts. You're requested to stay for questioning. Carl froze, the color draining from his face. The mayor looked out over the crowd. The vote will proceed, all in favor of the revised plan presented by Ms. Whitland.
One by one, hands went up. 5, 6, all but one.
Ethan didn't even realize he was holding his breath until the gavel came down. Motion approved. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the room erupted. Applause, tears, the kind of relieved laughter that only comes after months of holding it in. Ava turned toward Ethan, her eyes bright but wet. He didn't need to say anything. The look between them said enough. It wasn't just the diner they saved, it was everything it stood for. But as the crowd cheered, a faint unease tugged at Ethan's chest. He caught a glimpse of Carl being led out by 2 officers, his face twisted not with fear, but with something colder.
A half smile.
And deep down, Ethan knew this fight wasn't over yet. The day after the hearing, sunlight spilled across Main Street for the first time in weeks. The town buzzed with new energy. Neighbors cleaning storefronts, kids drawing chalk hearts on the sidewalks, laughter echoing outside the diner's boarded windows. For once, hope felt like something people could touch. Inside the diner, Ethan helped Frank reconnect the coffee machine while Ava organized papers for the renovation plan. Her usual confidence had returned, but now it was warmer, softer. "We did it," she said quietly, looking around at the place that had nearly been taken away. "My mother would have loved this."
Ethan smiled, wiping his hands on a rag. "Feels like she's still here. Every time this place fills with people again, you'll know you kept her promise." Ava nodded, and for a moment, the silence between them was comfortable, peaceful. But peace in towns like theirs never lasted long.
That afternoon, Mrs. Ortega stopped by, her face pale. She carried a folder under her arm. "You need to see this," she said, setting it on the counter. "The police searched Carl's office this morning. They found financial transfers from an account under a different name, Thomas Beck." Ava frowned. "Who's that?" Mrs. Ortega lowered her voice. "A developer from Cleveland. The same man who bought 3 other downtown blocks right after their inspections were failed." Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "You think Carl was working for him?" "I don't just think," Mrs. Ortega said, sliding over a printed email. "I know. Carl was promised a cut of the resale once this block got condemned." Ava's hands trembled as she read. "So he planned to lose me everything, to sell it off before I even noticed." Ethan's jaw tightened. What happens now?" Before she could answer, the bell over the diner door jingled. A man in an expensive coat stepped inside, shaking off the cold. He looked like he belonged in a city boardroom, not in a small-town diner. His eyes swept the room, sharp and assessing, before settling on Ava.
"Ms. Whitland," he said smoothly, "Thomas Beck, I believe we have business to discuss."
Ava froze. "What kind of business?" "The kind that helps both of us move on from unfortunate misunderstandings." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Carl made a mess, but we can still salvage the deal. Sell me the property quietly, and I'll make sure the investigation disappears." Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady but low. "You're threatening her in front of witnesses?" Beck turned slightly, his grin widening. "I'm offering her a way out. You're the one turning it into a threat." Ava's pulse raced, but she kept her voice calm. "You're wasting your time. The council already approved the new plan." He chuckled. "Council votes can change, people can be persuaded, money helps with that." Ethan's fists clenched. "You need to leave." Beck ignored him. "Think carefully, Ms. Whitland. You're young, idealistic, but not untouchable. That diner, it's sentimental, ideal in reality, and in reality, people like you don't win." Ava took a step forward, her fear giving way to something fiercer. "Then maybe it's time reality learned something new." Beck's smile faded. He leaned in, voice low enough that only she could hear. "You'll regret this." Then he turned and walked out, the bell jingling once more, the sound somehow colder than before. Ethan exhaled, muscles still tight. "You okay?" Ava nodded slowly. "Not really, but I'm done letting people like him scare me." Mrs. Ortega closed the folder. "I'll make sure the evidence reaches the state attorney. Beck won't bury this one." As the 3 of them stood there, the wind rattled the diner windows again, just a whisper, but enough to remind them that every fight has an echo. That night, when Ethan drove home, he noticed a dark car parked across the street from his house. Its engine was running, lights off. He slowed, watching it through the mirror. The car didn't move. Inside, Maya slept peacefully on the couch, a blanket pulled up to her chin. Ethan turned off the lights and peeked out through the curtains. The car was still there. For a long time, he stood in the dark, heart pounding, until the engine finally started and the car rolled away. He didn't sleep that night, because he knew what that meant. The storm wasn't over, it was just changing shape. The following days passed in uneasy silence. The town looked calm from the outside, but under that calm ran the pulse of fear and defiance. The diner remained closed while Ava waited for investigators to confirm what everyone already suspected, that Carl and Thomas Beck had been working together for months, forging documents and paying off inspectors to force unsafe verdicts. Ethan barely slept. Each night, he checked the street outside his home twice before turning off the lights. The dark car didn't return, but the unease never left. He tried to keep things normal for Maya, helping with her homework, cooking breakfast, but his eyes kept drifting toward the window, toward the shadows. By midweek, the investigation results came back. The evidence was undeniable. Carl and Beck were both charged with fraud and coercion. The news spread fast, first through the local paper, then across the town's radio station. For the first time in a long while, the community breathed again. But Ava didn't celebrate. She stood in the empty diner that afternoon, staring at the cracked tile floor. "It's strange," she said quietly. "I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I just feel tired." Ethan set down a box of supplies beside her. "That's because you're still standing in the wreckage. It takes a while to feel the rebuild." She smiled faintly, a ghost of gratitude in her eyes. "You always know how to say things that make sense." "Occupational hazard," he said lightly. "When you cook for people long enough, you learn to talk like food, simple, but it sticks." Her laughter was small but real, the kind of laugh that carried warmth after too many cold weeks. That night, the town held an impromptu gathering outside the diner. Strings of old bulbs were hung across the street, and someone brought a guitar. It wasn't a party, it was a thank you. People brought casseroles, pies, and coffee in thermoses. Someone even handed Ava a small framed photo of her mother's old diner found in a box at the local archive. On the back, a handwritten note read, "She'd be proud of what you did here." Ava ran her fingers along the glass. "She always said a town's heart isn't in its skyline," she whispered. "It's in the lights that stay on when everything else goes dark." Later, when the crowd thinned, Ethan stood by the diner door watching her. "You could still sell," he said softly. "Walk away, start new somewhere else." Ava turned to him, her expression calm but certain. "I've spent my whole life moving forward without looking back. Maybe this time I should build something where I am." He nodded, understanding more than he could say. "Then let's start tomorrow." The two of them stood together in the glow of the last streetlight. Across the road, Maya slept in Frank's old pickup truck, wrapped in a blanket, her hand clutching her stuffed rabbit. Ethan glanced at her, then back at Ava. "You know, for the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm fighting alone." Ava smiled, tucking her hair behind her ear. "You never were. You just needed someone to remind you." A gust of wind passed down the street, rustling the loose papers taped to the diner window. One of them lifted just enough for the light to hit the words written in Ava's handwriting. Community Bridge Fund, rebuilding together. For a moment, Ethan just stood there watching the reflection of the bulbs flicker across the glass. The same diner that once held silence and fear now shimmered with life again. He reached for the switch beside the door and flipped it. Inside, the neon sign sputtered, then glowed steady, open. The crowd cheered softly from across the street, and Ethan looked at Ava, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Your mother was right." Ava tilted her head. "About what?" "The lights," he said. "They do stay on." And for the first time in what felt like forever, the town felt alive again, quiet, hopeful, and unbroken. Spring came early that year, the snow melted before anyone expected it, and the whole town seemed to stretch awake. The air smelled of fresh soil and rain, the kind of scent that makes people believe in second chances. Inside the diner, the sound of clinking cups and low laughter filled the room again. The place looked different, fresh paint, new light fixtures, a mural of the old mom's place hand-drawn across the back wall, but it still felt the same. The heart hadn't changed. Ava moved through the crowd, greeting customers, shaking hands. The opening day had drawn almost everyone in town. Mrs. Ortega sat by the window sipping her coffee with a satisfied smile while Frank managed the kitchen, shouting orders with renewed energy. Ethan worked beside him, apron tied loosely, humming under his breath. When he turned around, Ava was standing there, holding 2 steaming mugs. "You're supposed to be a guest today, not staff," she teased. "Couldn't help it," he said, smiling. "Feels strange seeing someone else at the grill." She handed him a cup. "Then consider this payment." They leaned against the counter, watching as Maya carried a tray of cookies from table to table, proudly announcing, "Free for everyone." Her laughter was the loudest thing in the diner. Ethan's gaze softened. "She hasn't laughed like that in months." Ava nodded. "That's the sound of a future, Ethan, not numbers, not buildings, people." He looked around at the room, the workers, the neighbors, the light spilling in from the windows, and realized she was right. This wasn't just a diner, it was proof that something broken could be rebuilt if enough people refused to give up. As the day wound down, Ava stepped outside. The street was bathed in sunset, the sky painted in soft orange and rose. Ethan joined her, wiping his hands on a towel. "You know," he said, you could have left. Most people would have." She smiled, quiet and sincere. "Maybe I didn't save the town, maybe it saved me." They stood in silence for a while, listening to the faint sound of music drifting from inside. Across the street, the shop owners had turned their lights on too, one by one, until the whole block glowed like a single heartbeat. Maya came running out, her curls bouncing, holding up a drawing she'd made. It showed the diner, the people inside, and above it, written in her uneven handwriting, a place that stays open. Ava crouched to take the picture, her voice soft. "That's beautiful."
Maya grinned. "Daddy says it's because everyone helped. That's why it's still here."
Ethan ruffled her hair, smiling. She's not wrong. As the evening settled in, the three of them stood by the diner window, the neon sign glowing gently, open, casting a warm reflection on their faces. Ava looked up at Ethan. "What now?" He took a slow breath, the smell of coffee and rain still in the air. "Now," he said, "we keep it that way." For a moment, the world felt still, the kind of stillness that comes not from silence, but from peace. And somewhere between the hum of voices and the fading light, Ava remembered her mother's words. The real measure of success isn't what you build, but what stays standing when you're gone. She smiled to herself, looking at the diner, the people, the family she'd somehow found along the way. Maybe that's what they all were now, builders of small miracles. Moral: sometimes rebuilding doesn't mean starting over, it means standing your ground until what's right finally takes root. Do you believe that respect and compassion can rebuild what greed once tore down? Thank you for watching. See you in the next story, Shatum, here on Inspire Fathers Who.